Now imagine you're Ray Charles in 1968, and at the end of one of your dance hall concerts in Browning, Pennsylvania, you basically have no songs left to play in the last 12 minutes of the concert. So what do? You basically turn to your band and you say, "Do as I do," and you turn to your background singers, the Raelettes, and say as I say. And you come up with what would be one of the most important pieces of American music. It's called What I Say. And this was created on the spot, ladies and gentlemen. So this is one of the most influential foundations for what would come afterwards for rock and roll. And it's my thrill to do this because Ray Charles is such a big influence on me and my playing, and even just who I've become as a musician, but also from taking a lot of lessons from him. Now, one thing I've mentioned in these reaction videos is I'm highlighting these legendary artists and figures throughout history and trying to take a few perspectives from them and leave you with a takeaway at the end of each of these videos that you can use on your own journey to sharpen the road you're on. Now, if that's something you sound like would be valuable to you, do hit like and subscribe so you can see more of these videos. Now, without further ado, let's jump into Ray Charles' What I Say. Before I start off real quick, like I said, this song in itself influenced so many people afterwards. This became a standard during the time. It was an R&B standard. It became a riff, that everybody was using that. And if you hear a lot of, obviously Elvis has covered the song, but this actually stemmed into a lot of the riff-based kind of influence for a lot of the rock and roll bands coming out of the UK. The Beatles, the Zeppelin, of course. The Rolling Stones were more on the Chicago side, but even them, everybody loved Ray Charles. They knew there was a unique quality to his music, and it was very sophisticated, very polished. And I'm going to get into some of the details of the thought process, and I think even the way Ray Charles was packaged to the world during this time, and why this is his prime and why he was so influential. But this riff in itself was so powerful, so simple, but very stylish, and he was basically able to put all his personality into this. It's very simple, very masculine, very bravado. And the fact that this was on the spot, it just shows you how tuned in he was into the language of the blues. So this next section is very cool because you see how fluid he is as he starts just going through these choruses of different licks leading up to the first verse here. And you hear that drummer following him like this. I want to say, as I'm stopping this chorus here, and you're going to hear me stop quite a bit just because YouTube's copyright is becoming very strict, but I promise you every time I stop, I will try to leave you with something as valuable as possible. But in the notion of this, this particular riff or this lick sequence that he's doing. He just has this ease about his playing, but there's, when I'm talking about the style of Ray Charles, like, there are licks, when I say licks for those non-musicians, I'm talking about phrases that he's playing that it's him. And for example, that's all you could say. It's just a blues, but a lot of that is very much Ray Charles phrasing. He had a meteor kind of feel to his playing, and he was very intentional about just putting certain notes to back up the licks that he was doing to kind of fatten them up a bit. But the other thing is too, the fact that he was so proficient on getting these tasty phrases out on a keyboard, like with an actual weighted keyboard or piano. When he went to like an electric keyboard, like the Wurlitzer, which was actually very new at the time, not too many people were using this, and he took it on the road because it was easier to deal with rather than having to deal with the detuned pianos at certain venues. But the fact that he was able to translate this over, the Wurlitzer is so perfect for Ray Charles and his sound. it just has this velvety kind of grit and richness to it where, the Fender Rhodes is super smooth, but this, it kind of almost sound, whenever I hear the Wurlitzer, it almost feels like it's Ray Charles, it's made for him. The Raelettes, when you hear them come in, the way Ray's voice sounds over this, all the textures match up perfectly. And I think even for the time, the way this is all being mixed, everything sat really well sonically. And you can tell, this is a record, and this is like made, back in the 60s, but it's like, or back in the 50s, I'm sorry, 1958. But the fact that he was able to still come up with something that's still so fresh today, like this song, it had a charm to it that we can still feel. We can almost hear and feel what it might have sounded like in that room. And that room is also very unique because that's where all the executive offices of Atlantic Records at the time was. So during the day, they would basically use it as an office. All the desks are laid out. They would push everything to the side walls in the evening, and that would be the live room for where everything was being recorded. In addition to this, there was a very, very, very impressive engineer by the name of Tom Dowd. Tom Dowd was a guy that mixed and recorded all Ray stuff, but he also did Aretha Franklin's, Ruth Brown's, and then, of course, down the line, he would do a lot of rock records that are prominent. Can't think of I can't think of them off the top of my head, but this is one of those things where it's setting up the foundation for Atlantic Records' legacy as well. You hear blues music coming from Chicago, with the Chess catalog, Muddy Waters and Little Walter and all that. That had a very gritty sound. It sounded like Chicago. Ray and the Atlantic Records sound of this time, it sounds like New York. It sounds like this Southern grit and the foundations of Southern blues and gospel music have this polish, and it's packaged super, super tastefully. And I think that's also what kind of drew me to it, where it just sounded like, wow, there's something that's so stylish and sophisticated and dignified about it. It sounded rich, but it also sounded soulful. And I think Ray, even especially the Wurlitzer, when you hear him do his stuff on the Wurlitzer, there's a lot of drama in his playing and the way his band sounded. But it's for songs like I Believe to My Soul, right? That easily could have been the soundtrack to a film noir movie. I almost feel like he could have easily created a bunch of songs in that style, and he would have been known as like this bluesy film noir kind of guy. And he was influenced by guys like Percy Mayfield, who would write really, really like, kind of gritty, seedy kind of songs, Hit the Road Jack. It was written by Percy Mayfield, for those of you that don't know. But yeah, I think that, when I hear this record, it just shows me the power of Ray Charles. Like, I'll tell each of you, if you get a chance, listen to this song right before you take off in an airplane next time. It does something to your nervous system that just makes you feel like, oh my God, like I get the freedom that this guy was putting into his playing on this record and just kind of the pure expression. So let's continue, but I had to stop there and just kind of dive into that. Very clever licks here. Just simple. There he is. There's the voice. I feel like, in my opinion, the godfather of American soul music. But like that voice to me is the United States in one voice. Just cuts through, unique, and he just had that character. And he was able to cut through the mixes like butter with that amazing voice. But all of these verses were all improvised when he did this on stage when this song was conceived. And basically taking these kind of stereotypical blues kind of call and responses and putting that together, but landed him a hit. This was a hit song, when it came out. So
knows how to shake that thing all right now, now. Hey, 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 hey.
As a running joke is,
Tell your mama, tell your pa, I'm gonna send you back to Arkansas.
how did he know the girl had a red dress? Think about that one.
Don't do right. Don't do right. When you see me in misery, come on, baby, see about me down there. All right. All right. Oh, play it, boy. When you see me in misery.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm playing along to this, even if it's choppier than how it normally sounds. But this song changed my life. I'm 34 years old, so I'm not. Obviously, I didn't grow up on this music per se, but I did get introduced to this music at a younger age. And when I was a teenager, when I was when I was junior year of high school, the first time I heard this song and it was actually able to kind of take it in for what it was relevant to my surroundings, even though I was growing up in a very different time. I think there was something about the energy and the way that I was starting to feel about my relationships with women and even, just what life felt like. I kind of this spoke to me. And I have a story that goes a little further back. Growing up in Toronto, my dad used to always listen to a soft rock station. But whenever we would drive down to the U.S., as soon as we crossed the border, that radio station channel would somehow go into, some kind of wide American mixed music station. And you would kind of hear stuff from back in the day. I would hear a lot of Aretha Franklin and Ray and all that. And I always had that ear for the blues. I always loved that change from that did something to me always. And this song, when I just heard that, that in itself and the tone of the Wurlitzer and all of it, though, just the drama, just sucked me right in. And that was it. It slowly disconnected me from all the music that was coming out at that time. I very, very quickly ended up being in this tunnel vision kind of rabbit hole of going very, very deep into the roots of this music and wanting to grasp it. So I feel like, for Ray, when you're able to kind of express what you're feeling so effectively, where people can feel it for years and years to come, and you're able to get across the same context of whatever bravado and whatever energy you had, I think that is something very special. So that's why I get inspired and I have to play along sometimes. But I will, I'm going to try to keep this to a reaction video as we continue here.
Come on, baby, see about me now, yeah. Hey, hey, all right. See the girl with the red dress on, she can do the birdland all night long, yeah, yeah. What I say?
Once again, the girl in the red dress, who is she? And I always say that the way that the record sounds, I know this is like a remastered version of whatever you want to call it, but even then, the way that everybody was, at such a high level of musicianship at that time. The way I look at these guys, they were like, if you walk into work and you know that there's a handful of people that are they are meant to be doing that job, whether or not that's what they want to do, certain people know how to solve for what industry they're in and what they're supposed to be doing on their time, with their time during this life. And Ray and that band and just musicians of that time, I think there was a certain commitment and a certain level of return they would also get, because you could actually get paid you could make a living doing this back then too. So there was there was kind of a return on investment. It's funny because my primary thing was I always wanted to be a musician, but I'm understanding now too, there's an art form in the content. And also, you're not going to be able to connect with people and share music genuinely in this digital age if you're not able to connect via storytelling and being able to talk about the things you're interested in. So this is a route that I'm taking. But for Ray, my point being is that band there were people that woke up and were like, this is what I do. And that it comes out in the music. It comes out in the way that they delivered. And especially Ray he's notorious for being a very, very, very hard band leader. He was very hard on all of his musicians, leading all the way up to the end of his life. But during this time, forget about it. Like, this was a peak Ray Charles, and he knew what he wanted. And there's a reason these records sound as good as they fucking do. So.
Tell me what I say. Tell me what I say. And I wanna know. Said I wanna know right now. And I wanna know. Said I wanna know right now, yeah. And I wanna know. Said I wanna know, yeah.
All right, and I got to say something before this next section here, because this is the other thing too here. I think Ray was super creative in his ability to basically take feelings that were coming out, not just negative, but even the positive feelings and the playful feelings that were coming out of the African American community, and being able to translate that over to a marketable and a palatable medium, through his music. I think, for example, he was able to take themes such as sex and even longing and all these different things and put them into songs where you would really just get the actual emotional dynamic that he was trying to get across. This next session here is this brilliant call and response kind of riff that him and the Raelettes do. And they developed this when they were on stage, and they improvised it, and they knew that they got a reaction out of the audience. And you're going to hear why this was so important. And a call and response in the blues, that's basically it. That is the foundation of the blues. You have a guy singing, and then he would basically answer with his guitar.
You better come on in my kitchen. Well, it's going to be rain. I grown.
You get the point.
What's that? What's that? One time? All right. One more time. Say it one more time right now. Say it one more time now. Say it one more time, yeah.
What a climax. And he gives it one more time. Yeah. And that type of climax, I mean, this is where Ray brings in the gospel. He brings in the church. And, I'm going to get into this over the next few videos I do when Ray Charles is involved. But the reason why Ray was so revolutionary, and he was also controversial for the time, is that for the longest time, up until I think the 50s, the blues was always seen as the devil's music in, black communities and obviously just in the South in general. I think you could say across the board, it was seen as this rebellious music coming from black Americans. And being rooted in a time where, that was kind of the escapism for a lot of people from their pain. It was seen as a very uncouth or a unorthodox way of expressing yourself. And you were supposed to only use song and expression within the church for the sake of, in the best interest of God. So for Ray to basically tie the knot, between the blues and gospel and make this a mainstream thing, and he's calling it soul music, it was very controversial because you're not just crossing wires musically, you're crossing wires culturally. There's a divide even within the black community that's like, hey, this is taboo. We don't do this. and you're bringing that into one, and it almost kind of empowered the, I guess, moving forward, what the language was going to be, and how valuable black music was going to become, even more so than it already was, especially for mainstream audiences. I mean, without Ray Charles, there's no Motown. Without Ray Charles, there's no Jimi Hendrix. Without Ray Charles, there's no Marvin Gaye, no Stevie Wonder, and the list goes on and forth, you know? But that's a big part of it. I mean, this is why this is so revolutionary. Even this climax section where when he's moaning and she's moaning back, like, obviously it's reference to, you know, a couple that's both climaxing. So very, very, very hip stuff, but very controversial for the time.
Baby, feel so good, yeah. Baby, feel so good. Baby, feel so good, yeah. Oh. It's all right. Said it's all
And I don't think I've talked about this yet. That drummer is phenomenal. Just, I don't think any other drummers replicated that feel on any other version that he's done. I think there's a couple of live concerts, but this one,
shake that thing.
woo!
Baby, shake that thing now. Baby, shake that thing. Baby, shake that thing right now. Baby, shake that thing. Baby, shake that thing. Oh, feel all right now, yeah. Said I feel all right now.
Wow. And you just kind of hear it. Like, it just keeps building up, and we're about to finish here. But you kind of get why this was so monumental during that time.
Tell you feel all right, yeah. Said I feel all right. Said I feel all right.
Brilliant. I mean, this is one of those things where I feel like, you know, Ray Charles, he was one of one, and he's the prototype. Like, he is a guy that developed a musical language. He had a phrasing that was unique to his own. He had a voice. You know, he was one of the great American voices. You know, even when you consider him as a singer, a lot of people call him a stylist. You know, a stylist is someone that is so unique that their voice does what it needs to do as a singer, but there's so much more than that. And he had the full package, like to play the keys the way he did, you know, and then to be able to also sing. Like, it's not... He just had that swagger. And I mean, like, I think when I tapped into Ray Charles's music, it came from a place of, it was something that was primal. Like, I felt like I had an identity at, you know, as most people in their adolescence think they have. But then this music just kind of, it grabbed me, and I've never been able to let go of it. You know, I've gone through many changes in my life. I've gone through so many different cities I've lived in, you know, Toronto, New York, Nashville, the Bay Area, etc. And through each of those different chapters, Ray has been a staple, and he's been kind of a grounding resource for me creatively. I think there's something whenever I feel like, oh man, what am I doing next? What do I go to? Even when I produce my own music, Ray is the guy. There is something from these records from the 50s that still have so much weight to them. I feel like there's a lot more juice to squeeze out of it. And I don't think there'll ever be a fruit that's dry, at least in my story, in my journey. But like I said in the beginning, I like to leave people with these takeaways. And this series has been very, very fulfilling for me to do this, where I'm able to take these legendary figures and talk about what it was that kind of gave them a unique edge or a unique kind of way to maneuver themselves through life or through their actual craft. And for Ray, I think it was that main thing of combining the gospel and the blues side, knowing that this was going to be very controversial. Sometimes, you know, as I'm talking about, you know, about not, you know, looking at certain crafts and certain resources as being fruits that can that have a limit to them, being able to take some of the things that you know have some weight to them and combining them for the sake of a new way for these things to be delivered. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel, and you don't need to... I feel like we have so many choices in this day and age of entertainment and, you know, services and apps and all these different things. Sometimes there are things that are tried and true. And I feel like the blues is nervous system regulation music. It'll definitely tap into your nervous system, and it'll be able to actually make you feel in tune with your pulse. What's going on with you that you need to address? And it doesn't have to be in a full-on therapy kind of thing, but it will make you feel something, and you know where that feeling is coming from, and you can't escape it. And I feel like to be able to understand enough about yourself, where you know, hey, there is something to this. I'm going to move into this path of the unknown by, actually taking things that are familiar and grounding and carrying them with me so they can almost be a beacon of light for me. For example, Ray Charles was trying to sound like Nat King Cole. He was trying to sound like Charles Brown. But as he moved forward, he didn't lose those influences, but he held on to them, and he was able to allow his true self to come out with the strengths of those tools that helped him kind of get through the dark, helped him get through the prospecting stage when he's like, chipping away, looking for oil, like a true prospector, or mining for gold. And you just go through the coal and the mud and the dust and all this stuff, and he finally found this. He found oil. He struck oil with this sound and is finding his true voice and allowing it to flourish. I will say that taking that, ability to know where you're at, know where your environment is, and be able to just chip away and know that you have the tools you need to kind of move forward. That's what I will leave you with. Now, for all of you that have been watching these reaction videos, thank you. And to anyone that's new, I will be expanding these videos into other different avenues outside of music, and more specifically into some of the more pivotal entrepreneurs within the United States and eventually the world. But, for example, I got a few coming up on, Colonel Sanders, Ray Kroc, the founder, quote unquote, of McDonald's, and being able to just talk about these journeys of people that figured it out. And I think that's what a lot of us need in this day and age. We're trying to figure out, where do we go from here? And we have so many tools, and I'm bringing it back to Ray here for a second. We have so many things that we have the blueprints. It's just a lot of us think that we have to throw away things because they're outdated or they're not good anymore. Hang on to the beacons of light that serve you, that keep you grounded, that keep you regulated. And just know that we're all figuring it out, but I hope that there's a community that can grow here that could be able to exchange in this conversation and exchange some energy. So once again, thanks to you all for joining me on this reaction video journey, and more specifically with my love of Ray Charles and What I Say. I will see you all in the next video. Thanks.